I'm Mo Rocca, and I'm excited to announce Season 4 of my podcast, Mobituaries. I've got a whole new bunch of stories to share with you about the most fascinating people and things who are no longer with us. From famous figures who died on the very same day, to the things I wish would die, like buffets. All that and much more. Listen to Mobituaries with Mo Rocca wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
Barenaked, Barenaked, ABCs. Welcome to the Barenaked ABCs, where we discuss every Barenaked Ladies song from 7 to Y. Whether we're talking about Burger King or we're talking about McDonald's, we always get to everything in the list. And tonight's song that we will be discussing is about McDonald's. Well, well, we'll get more into that. Joining me tonight for my co-hosts, we have Jeff and Heidi. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm loving it.
I'm loving it.
And Heidi, I love that little route that you did, considering the fact that we're a podcast and no one can see you doing the fist wave there, the Arsenio Hall.
We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of that. We all do the.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And we have a special guest tonight because tonight we're discussing a really deep dive cover by Barenaked Ladies, one that wasn't on anything for a long time, and then finally they released an album that did a live set of their stuff, and this is one of the songs that was on that live disc, and it was great because they did this song on WCYY, and so you always had, this is WCYY bringing you Barenaked Ladies, and that was your intro to the song if you downloaded it for the Barenaked Ladies version. But I am very honored tonight to have with us the original creator and singer of this song, Dean Friedman.
Hey, Tracy.
Woo!
Hey, Heidi and Jeff. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Dean.
I love it when we can get the original artist on to discuss the song as well as to discuss their point of view of the remakes and the covers.
Well, it was a hoot when I first heard about it, and I a big smile on my face the first time that someone played the track for me, and especially when the hip hop break came in the middle. That really cracked me up. And
I was wondering what you thought about that, actually.
wait, which hip hop break? The hip hop break of the Beastie Boys, or the hip hop break of the old 70s commercial, 1982 commercial, where they do all of the different things you can buy at McDonald's?
Yeah, to all be fair. Well, it was the Beastie Boys that took me by surprise, but I enjoyed the mashup. So. Yeah, no, I thought it was a great cover. You know, anytime I hear someone interpreting one of my tunes, it's delightful. In fact, the more far afield from my original concept, the better. Because once you write a song, they're like little kids. They go off out into the world, and they have to fend for themselves. Some are better behaved than others. Some right back home to their parents, but McDonald's Girl was really a persistent little son of a bitch. Because it insisted on being heard, even after it was officially banned by the BBC. When I released it on my third album, Rumble and Romeo, but it just
why did they decide to ban it?
Well, in those days, and ostensibly still to this day, but it's changed. In those days, well, the BBC is pretty much a government radio station, a national station in the UK, and because they're a government-controlled station, and specifically a non-commercial station, they had strict rules about any lyrics that hinted at a commercial endorsement. So, for example, when the Kinks put out Lola, they had to change the lyric Coca-Cola to Cherry Cola.
Right.
And I think Paul Simon's Kodachrome was not played because for that very reason. So when the label put out McDonald's Girl, they said, no, times have changed and they'll play it. But it was, again, officially banned, although they played it in Ireland a lot, which was nice. And the few commercial stations that were just coming up in the UK at the time played it as well. But effectively, because it was banned, it really kind of derailed my career, led me to being kicked off the label. But as I say, it was the little song that it really insisted on being heard, and it persisted. And it was just a few years later that a then unknown band out of Canada did a cover version of it, which was, as I understand it, was one of their first airplay hits. Mm-hmm. And not too long after that, a band called the Blenders covered it, and it was a #1 hit in Norway. And then YouTube came along, and then it went viral. And there are hundreds of YouTube videos of people all over the world doing cover versions or lip syncing to existing cover versions and dancing around and acting out McDonald's Girl. So it was gratifying seeing the song get out there into the real world, really left to its own devices.
And did McDonald's actually use it in a commercial too eventually?
Well, in fact, and bear in mind, this was more than 3 decades after it was banned. For I was being accused of writing a commercial, and in fact, finally, just a few years ago, I got a call from corporate headquarters of McDonald's, and they said, "Mr. Friedman, we'd like to license your song for a national TV and radio campaign." And I said, "Wow, that's great. What took you so fucking long?" But I tell you, I mean, there is an anecdote that I've only told a few times, but this is true, is that after I was dropped by CBS because it had been banned, I was furious. And I thought, well, if you're going to give me a hard time for writing supposedly a commercial, well, I'm going to make it a commercial. So I actually got an appointment with the head of marketing for corporate headquarters of McDonald's in Chicago. This was almost 40 years ago at this point, right after I've been dropped by CBS. And I went out there and I had printed up a whole bunch of flexi discs. If you remember in a magazine, you'd open up a magazine, there'd be a flexible plastic vinyl LP,
yes.
A 45 RPM that you could, carefully place on your turntable and play it. Well, I had 1,000 of those made up of McDonald's Girl. And so I flew out to Chicago with a whole pile of these McDonald's Girl singles under my arm, and really excited about having this meeting with their marketing department. And I went there a day early. I didn't want to be late. I wanted to make sure I did everything right. So I walked into their corporate headquarters, into the lobby, just so I knew how to get there, so I wouldn't get lost, because it was Chicago. I wasn't familiar with the town. But as I was about to leave the building, I noticed there was a big door. Someone was about to open, and it said mailroom on it. And I thought, well, I went up to that person, and I just held the door for a second. I said, "Excuse me, I'm wondering, if I offered you $20, could you put one of these flexi discs of McDonald's Girl in every mailbox for McDonald's corporate headquarters?" The guy looked at the 20. He said, "Sure." And so I stood there, and he put every one of these flexi disc singles in the mail slots of every corporate executive at McDonald's headquarters. Now, I walked away thinking, what a stroke of genius. This was such a great idea. This is how you get things done. And by the time I got back to where I was staying, there was a message left for me that they had canceled the meeting because they were so offended that I had violated the sanctity of their mailroom that they weren't interested in talking to me anymore. So that was my my first lesson in obeying corporate protocol.
That is amazing. I would have thought they would have loved your ingenuity.
Well, you'd think, but we're talking a very straight-laced company here.
Well, yes, but I mean, look where they came from. I mean, they built themselves from a very small, company to what it became. Like, holy cow, that just amazes me.
But Tracy, it made it even that much more sweet and satisfying when they finally called me up and did indeed license the song for a national TV and radio campaign. And that's my plan, is to write a great hit song and then sit on my ass for 30 years till some corporate company realizes how good it is.
I was really intrigued with the fact that they used the Blenders version for that commercial because it doesn't sound so significantly different from yours that they couldn't have just used yours.
Well, they could have used Barenaked Ladies. You know what? The Blenders did a really nice, sweet vocal arrangement of it. So
that is true.
I thought that was really superb. And, it also kind of, I saw how it all fit. It blended in with their sort of warm, fuzzy, treatment of this McDonald's universe. And I was delighted by the whole peculiar turn of events.
I don't think the B&L version would have gave people warm and fuzzies like that. I don't think that's their focus when they did their version.
Well, what can I tell you? It was full of enthusiasm, and that's one of the best parts of it.
I would agree. It is significantly different than your original.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's like comparing different fruits, really, when it comes down to it, because even though it has the same stem beginning, they really took it in a different direction to give it a different sound. And so it's intriguing to hear these two different versions, and I love both of them.
Well, the big challenge for me was that once the pandemic kicked in with the lockdown, I had to cancel a 40-city UK tour along with every other musician. And I started doing webcasts, as did every other musician. And I invited Stephen Page to be one of my first guests. And so right here in the studio where I'm talking to you from, we did a split screen, and we bravely attempted to do our version of McDonald's Girl as a cover tune. But the problem is that we do it in totally different keys, and we do it different changes, the chord changes. So I was trying to go and he's going. There were a couple of clangers and missteps, but actually it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. Everyone watching, I think, really enjoyed it.
It was a great time. I actually tuned in for that. And at the time, I think it was one of those things I needed. I mean, because that whole year was just so dark and uncertain for everybody. And little moments like that, I think, as a musician and everything, just were so amazing to see. This is what everyone is doing. This is how they're creatively breaking out of what's going on. And they're still reaching out to fans and everything. And I thought that was fantastic. It was a great time.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I did as well. I think Steve did too.
Yeah, no, and you can see that the joy that you had when you guys were doing that definitely came through when we were watching that discussion and that sort of concert, kind of playing that song.
I'm a fan. So it's mutual, and it's always fun to see what Steven's up to and what the rest of the band is up to.
Now, I don't think I asked you this last time we talked about it, but where did McDonald's Girl come from? Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of this song?
Well, you have to appreciate that when start out gigging as a musician, playing, lounge gigs and weddings and bar mitzvahs and, club dates and whatever you do. You always find yourself loading up your gear, 2:00 in the morning, starving, looking for a diner that's open 24 hours to get something to eat. And inevitably that means you're sitting there, with your pals, eating a bacon cheeseburger deluxe platter. And the sweet savior of the night is the cute waitress in a tight fitting uniform, giving you this delicious burger. So you can't help but fall in love with her. And
was it always McDonald's Girl, or did you have another title to start with, like Diner Girl, and then it just became McDonald's Girl?
Well, it might have been a Burger King Girl, but the syllables didn't fit exactly right. So it just it somehow fell into place, and she was an angel in a polyester uniform. Although that's just one aside here. When McDonald's Girl, when the McDonald's Corporation licensed McDonald's Girl, they called me out and said, "Look, we'd like to ask you if you'd be willing to make a couple of small changes to the lyric." I said, "Well, what do you have in mind?" And he goes, "Well, first of all, we think 15 is too young, because that was the original age." I said, "Okay, what else?" And he goes, "Well, also, that line where you refer to her as a virgin, we'd like to change that as well." So I
which is one of the best lines in the song. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Well, and also I said to the guy, I said, "So wait a minute, let's just, so I understand what you're asking here. Instead of a song about a sweet, innocent, young 15-year-old virgin, you want the song to be about a 16-year-old slut?" And so they didn't appreciate that take on it. But and also the other line was that I'm sad to say that she's in the McDonald's Girl, in the McDonald's commercials, she's no longer wearing a polyester uniform. She's now an angel in a Golden Arches uniform.
Oh,
but she's still an angel.
What was the virgin line changed to?
I'm trying to think what it was. It escapes me in my mind. But
I actually watched it not too long ago, and I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, some innocent euphemism or replacement.
So it was the Kids Bop version, basically.
Exactly, the Kids Bop.
Yeah.
Although I gotta say, my kids listen to it when I'm in the car listening to this, and it just goes over their heads. They haven't asked me about that line yet, so just McDonald's being a little picky there.
It's all very innocent.
Well, and that's what I've always loved about this song is I was the 15-year-old McDonald's girl. That was my first job.
That's awesome.
Say that I got fired after my second week. Actually, I fell down the stairs, and they just thought I was too clumsy to work there, apparently. So that's so Heidi. But that's one thing I've always loved about this song is because there is an innocence and a truth to this song that is very much like that 15, 16-year-old kid that's going to McDonald's because he's got a crush on that girl. And like that there is something sweet about it and also a little saucy. I get it. About, what my homeroom teacher would have to send us home for a week. Because it's that exploration and that, you're going to sit there until everything is cold just to linger a little bit longer and see if she notices you. And that whole goodbye, which he says to everybody, but translates to a 15-year-old boy as let's go get busy in the back.
Oh,
row.
yeah. but also in the lyric, he's, characterizing her as the only other virgin I know. And that's
Right.
implying that he's the other virgin.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, how much more innocent can you get?
Exactly. And I like the innocence that's in it. I also like the authenticity. There we go. I love the authenticity of those moments, because I had moments like that. I think everyone, or a lot of people, have moments like that in their childhood, in their teenage years. And because it is innocent, and because it's just this sweet moment, it really kind of brings up these reminiscent feelings.
Well, I mean, that was, I guess, the feeling I was trying to evoke, because, you know, it was this, the whole album, Rumpled Romeo, which McDonald's Girl comes from, was really this pure romantic album filled with adolescent angst and love, and, you know, all these sort of not only innocent, but, you know, from an innocent time, and trying to evoke those feelings of hope and optimism, and there's definitely a lot of naivete in it, but you know, almost every song on the album, it really does take it from that point of view. In fact, when I perform McDonald's Girl these days, because I don't change her age, she's still 15, I have to preface it by saying, look, I just want to make it clear that this song is being sung by a teenage boy who's smitten with the girl behind the counter. Because I have had when I haven't done that, I've had some people come up to me irate at the end of the show, telling me how inappropriate they thought it was for me to sing this, you know, love song, yearning for, you know, some underage jailbait. So
yeah, but you say in the lyrics that you're in Little League, like it's actually in there.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And that's that particular verse still, like, there's something Americana about it for me.
Yeah.
That it's, you know, it's getting dark, but the gold arches light up my way, turn the corner of the traffic light, and then I rehearse what I'm gonna say. And it reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future where he's like, I'm your density. Instead of density, because I can see the wheels turning. And I taught high school for 20 years, and I saw this happen a million times.
There you go. Sure.
It's like in the band room going, Miss Welch, I really want to ask her. And the clock is turning of, I'm going to say, I'd like to order fries and a quarter pounder with cheese. I love the light in your eyes. Like, it's just like,
yeah,
I'm your density.
I love how the pickup line becomes the order. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the whole song.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that kind of feedback, because, you know, those are the kind of thoughts that occur to me as I'm trying to develop a character and paint a scene. And you know, even the golden arches light up the way. For me, that was a really evocative line. Mm-hmm. You know, one of my favorite singer-songwriters and biggest musical influences, in particular lyrically, is Joni Mitchell. And in one characteristic of Joni Mitchell, and I would guess it's because she started out training as a painter, is that she fills her lyrics with color and light. And you know, that a case of you know, like you know, in the blue TV screen light, there are these very vivid scenes, almost of a cinematic quality, that she conjures up with her lyrics, and light is always an important aspect of it. And so, as a writer, that's something I always aspired to do, and still to this day, to be aware of setting the scene. Mm-hmm. And because, you know, just a little thing like those golden arches light up the way, it sort of suggests a time of day. Mm-hmm. It's after school. Things are, you know, it's getting towards dusk, and those lights are, you know, beckoning them. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's all, to my mind, evocative. And it's a scene that I know is familiar to as many millions of people have eaten billions of McDonald's hamburgers.
Well, it totally, like you said, evocative. It takes me back to like the late 70s, early 80s, where you would go to practice and then you would ride your bike home, and you're 14, 15 years old and you're riding your bike home and you've got like enough allowance in your pocket to grab a burger or whatever. And the Golden Arches, especially, I live in a town of 6,000 people. We have one McDonald's, of course. And it's, that bright light and it represents a lot of things, obviously, but it really takes you back to that time period where it was safe for kids to do those things.
Right.
And,
that's it.
So that's where it also ties into that innocence piece. So it really, it's one of those, my favorite songs from my early 20s, because it brought me back to that time period, which I think is something we're lacking so much today.
Well, I think it's also great that you're officially an authentic McDonald's girl. So. I love that.
For like 2 weeks.
Well, for 2 weeks. Well, look.
But then I became the Woolworths girl, and nobody knows what that is anymore.
That's right.
And we did not have polyester uniforms at Woolworths. So.
Well, one thing that really stands out for me in this song that just really hits, and you talked about the word painting or the colors of the lyrics, and the vivid, and where it maybe hits me, and I'm assuming this is how I interpret the song, and I think everyone, good lyricists and good songwriters write just enough that they get their message across, but people interpret them the way that hits them. But where it comes back to memories, because I was that kid too. I was, early 80s. I was in 7-8-year-old. So I was in Little League around the time this song, or close to the time the song came out. So it does remind me of that time. And I remember being that 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kid going into 12, 13. And one thing I would always do is I would rehearse the lines, and I would say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say this. And so many memories of chickening out. And you have that line in there about the burger getting cold. Yes. And that to me is one of my favorite ones, because it's almost like, you sat there until the burger got cold and now it's time to go. And like that kind of imagery I just love from this song, because every time I hear that line, I'm like, oh yeah.
And you didn't eat the burger. The burger sat there and got
just
cold.
Sat there. You're waiting to get up your nerve to go talk to her.
Well, that's the argument I gave to the BBC when they banned the song. They were afraid that immediately upon hearing McDonald's Girl on the air, millions of people all over the UK would start dashing down to the nearest McDonald's, gorging themselves on hamburgers. And I argued, I said, look, if you listen carefully to the lyrics, I never actually eat the hamburger. And I thought it could be more of a public service announcement, but they never saw it that way.
You don't say anything about eating the fries or not. And let's be honest, I don't know who can turn down McDonald's fries, but maybe you didn't eat them. I don't.
No, I probably ate the fries.
I wonder how many burgers the kid actually went through, because he probably did that every night, went down, bought a burger, never ate it. He went there to see her. And I also imagine in my brain, and the little movie in my mind, oh, there's a Broadway reference, the movie in my mind, that he is younger than her by a little bit. And he's like, really thinks that there's going to be something, but she's all like, bye-bye now, bye-bye, like she would be with any customer, and is never going to give him the time of the day. But she's the what's the word? The pinnacle of girl for him at that moment.
Well, you never know, because if the kid in the song is as persistent as the song itself, who knows?
Maybe she'll show up with a burger.
She might have, said yes when he asked her out. Finally, and when he finally got up the nerve to ask her out on a date.
We need a part two.
We need the follow-up. Yeah.
Well, there's a thought.
They get together, and eventually they open a franchise, and it's a whole thing. And they have little McDonald's babies. It's like
the twist is he marries Wendy Thomas.
Oh.
This is fast food for thought, folks.
Well, I'm going to bring us to a similar but not quite the same topic and discuss the sound of the songs, the original as well as the B&L version. I like the sound that you chose for this song, Dean, which is that kind of soft rock type feel, that 70s soft rock kind of feel, which goes with the theme of the song, like the theme of the words of the song.
I leave from softball practice every night. It's getting dark, but the golden arches light up the way. I turn the corner at the traffic light. I count my money and then I rehearse what I'm gonna say. I'd like an order of fries, quarter pounder with cheese. I love the light in your eyes. Will you go out with me, please? I am in love with a McDonald's girl. She has a smile of innocence, so tender and warm. I am in love with a McDonald's girl. She is an angel in a polyester uniform.
Well, the song, one of the most common questions you're asked as a songwriter is which comes first, the words or the music? And my stock answer is it depends. Mm-hmm. And, every song is different. But in this instance, I can safely say that it started with the vocabulary and this groove. With a McDonald's girl, she has a smile of innocence as a tender and warm. I'm in love with a McDonald's girl. She is an angel in a polyester uniform. And I mean, that's how it started, but it was with that harmonic rhythm and that groove. It might not be apparent, but even though I write a lot of pop songs, my stuff, if you folks familiar with my albums know that they're really eclectic and they run the gamut from jazz to folk to pop to rock to country, you name it. And a lot of it is really rooted on the jazz education that I got going to City College. And I guess also, listening to West Side Story and Leonard Bernstein soundtrack. But because of that, I've always had an affinity for R&B because R&B, the genre, of all the genres you'll hear on the radio, in terms of contemporary top 40 music, is the one that most incorporates that jazz vocabulary, those jazz harmonies, and also in a very subtle way, those jazz rhythms. So there are all these, ninths and sevenths and, 2/5 progressions that are part of jazz that are hidden in what otherwise sounds just like a pop song, including that groove, which is, you're right, it has got a 70s vibe, but that 70s vibe, to my mind, evolves from R&B in terms of the groove, in terms of the rhythm of it. And so in this instance, it started with that groove.
You saying that actually kind of brings up what Heidi and I were talking about earlier, and we were trying to place like, okay, well, it kind of sounds like this, it kind of sounds like that. To me, as you brought that up, Stevie Wonder, like the eclecticism of Stevie Wonder, but also like when he does those soft songs, when he does the kind of the innocent songs. My Sherry Amore.
Exactly. When I fall in love.
So yes, absolutely, and he was another big influence, and for that reason, because he works in that genre and uses that harmonic vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it wouldn't have occurred to me otherwise. But what you said, R&B, I'm like, that's who it's evoking for me. And I love Stevie Wonder, and so no wonder that like this song really kind of plays on those heartstrings for me. And I think that the tone of voice that you even use for this song also plays into that because it really kind of gives that innocence to it, that naivete.
Well, let's see. It's funny. This is off my third album, as I mentioned earlier, but it was not what originally was going to be my third album, because in fact, my third album was something I started at Rosebud Studios in New York City. And there was this typical squabble with the record label and management, and the third album was abandoned. The label decided not to pay the studio, and so a lot of the tracks from the third album were sort of like suspended in midair, and a lot of them wound up on what became my fourth album, Songs for Grownups. And I was so disgusted with the record industry and with my label in particular, because it is an industry that eats its young, that I put a lot of those songs aside. And those songs that wound up being on Songs for Grownups were very grown-up songs like Saturday Fathers and Under a Canopy. They dealt with much more adult themes. I guess for me, it was trying to process what I was going through in terms of the industry, and really furious and frustrated. And so I spent a lot of time walking my dog Barker in Riverside Park, where I met the woman who became my wife and is upstairs in the kitchen. After 40 plus years walking our dogs respectively in the park. She wouldn't talk to me for a long time, but she liked my dog. So after being furious and embittered with the industry itself, I basically fell in love, and I sat down and wrote a bunch of these teenage love songs, because basically that's how I felt. And I think that feeling is evoked throughout that album. And it really is conceptually a narrative of that teenage falling in love experience. But it was not the album that I originally started to make. It took another really almost 2 decades after being dropped by Epic till I finally got back in the studio and was able to, re-enter becoming a recording artist. And I never stopped. I never stopped being a musician. I never stopped writing songs. But effectively, I was exiled from the music industry for almost 20 years. Wow. And but I kept busy and did a whole bunch of other fun multimedia pursuits.
Well, I'm glad that you, like McDonald's Girl, kind of pursued and continued and kind of the little engine that could through that, because like that album for Grownups is Songs for Grownups is amazing.
Thank you. The Saturday Fathers song, as a child of multiple divorces on both sides, especially, in the early 80s, that was, we had a lot of kids growing up that way. And it broke my heart, really. That song in particular, you don't have a lot of songs like that, especially told from a father's side or a male side. And it broke me the first time I listened to it. I have to tell you that. It was tough. I came from 9 divorces between my 2 parents, 4 on one side, 5 on the other.
Oy vey.
Yeah, oy vey is right. But my father that was the first marriage. And when I heard Saturday Fathers for the first time, I was like, that was me at 5 years old. Like, that was there were so many images in that song that just broke me. I'm not going to get emotional, I swear. Go from McDonald's Girl to utter depression. But it was that.
But that's what a good song does.
Is a weird connection is you would meet on Saturday in the McDonald's parking lot. And so it's kind of that weird, awful connection of McDonald's being like in some ways such an iconic part of your childhood and youth.
Mhm.
And then when you go through that period of divorce, that's where you show up on Saturday because it's equal ground. And so, yeah, that just broke me, I got to say.
Well, it's funny because in my case, it was Dairy Queen. But it was the same scenario. Dairy Queen, a burger and a movie, and a burger and a shake. And it's weird because when I first played that song for the two heads of the indie label that I was on at the time, Life Song Records, one of the guys, Terry Cashman, I played the song, and you know if a song's decent or not, and it had been getting a really powerful reaction from folks. Anyway, I played Saturday Fathers for him, and he turned to me after I finished. He said, "Dean, I'm a Saturday Fathers, and that's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, and I never want to hear it again." This was the head of my label telling me this. And so I said, okay. Not long after that, we parted ways entirely. But I appreciate you sharing that, Heidi. It was because when my folks got divorced, when they got a divorce, it was early days. And it was only once that it happened. So I hear you. But it was so early. It was before it was fashionable. And so there was a huge stigma associated with it. Married couples, they didn't want my mom associating with their families or husbands because it was like, oh boy. And as even as a little kid, even if you're not sure why, there is that sense of isolation that you must be really different.
Very much.
Because you're not doing all these things. Yeah. But it is also something that you deal with and you grow and and hopefully it gives you a sense of independence, which you
much.
clearly have. And so you embrace
just
those.
Fine, except for the twitch.
And it's an endearing twitch, Heidi.
Oh, thanks.
I think that's one thing that really, if I could just gush, I mean, I know it's an interview, we're supposed to ask questions, but if I could just gush, and I realized this the first time we did the interview and then with listening to your recent stuff, is you're one of, because I do a lot of comedy music. That's kind of where I am right now. I've been trying to write more serious stuff. You walk that balance probably better than most artists I know. Like you can write the straight up funny songs, like Too Much Stuff, for example. Even McDonald's World has a lot of comic elements. But when you write a serious song, it's like Saturday's Father, or I actually think you wrote the saddest song I've heard recently with Halfway Normal World. Don't get me started on that one. Which I think is one of the saddest songs I've ever listened to. Like you walk that line between the comical elements and the serious songs better than a lot of people out there. And I like you talked about the eclectic side of it. That's the other thing that you do very well too, that you have that ability to really touch on, like just in the last album, the jazzy songs, the kind of the childlike bop of when you did Welcome to Stupid Town, and the kind of the spy feel of The Russians Are Coming. You're definitely one of the most eclectic artists that I've had a chance to listen to over the last couple of years when I've really listened to your stuff, and that just really impresses me.
And I love how you match up the sound with the song. Like the point of that song, you're making that sound connect with it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's something that the heads of labels I've been on always found very problematic. They would shake their heads and say, "Dean, we don't even know where to put you in the record store. Where are we going to categorize you? Is it jazz, pop, country, folk?" And my perspective has always been, basically, I see what I do is writing short stories and setting them to music, and whatever the idiom is. it first has to serve the story being told. And, in terms of that balance between the serious and the not so serious, I might attribute that just to genetics, or the culture that I come from, because humor is just one of those things I view as a crucial survival mechanism,
right?
Strategy, and that without a sense of humor, without that kind of perspective, it's hard to remain sane in the midst of all the things that actually happen in the world. So I do try to, or I don't know if I try, I think it's just my nature. That my perspective does try to see the humor even in some pretty awful situations. On the latest album, American Lullaby, it was more intentional, because the new album is something that's basically my personal take on all the crazy, insane stuff that has happened in America and around the world over the last 6 years, ever since we woke up to find that a bankrupt real estate developer and known money launderer for the Russian mafia was president of the United States. And all the things that led from there, including the pandemic and now, what used to be referred to as pending climate crisis, or the looming crisis, is now here. So I realized, in trying to talk about things that are happening today all around us, that I was dealing with difficult subject matter, difficult topics and material. And I knew that in order to address them, I needed to find a way to leaven that seriousness with a healthy dose of humor and an ample amount of silliness. And I feel like I've accomplished that, because that's the reaction I've gotten from folks. Because, as you say, in Stupid Town, it is a lot of people's favorite songs because it is so stupid and silly. But it deals with some of the most pressing crises that are facing us in terms of our culture and injustices in terms of how society is set up. And, even a song like Halfway Normal World, the part of the intent of that refrain is that it's not really enough to go back to the normal world we came from, because if nothing else, this pandemic has served to starkly highlight the discrepancies and injustices and unfairness that are structural in our society. And so it's not enough to go back to the way things were. We really have to aspire to a better normal, or in the context of that song, what I refer to as a halfway normal world.
Oh, you nailed it. I think that's like why the first time I heard it, I was actually in tears listening to it, because it's so. I think it's almost deceptively sad and depressing, in a good way. In the fact that you refer to things that maybe back at the time might have seemed mundane or everyday, and how important they were. Going to a ball game might have become very routine, or going to a party or something like that, or having those conversations, and how that was lost, first of all. But like you said, I think that's something that I know I myself realize, as someone that does struggle with OCD and mental health, and who's a knowledge hound and wants to read everything. During that time, I think we did realize it wasn't going to stop the world from being woke. People are like, well, why are there protests happening during a pandemic? Because you can't stop that. And I think, like you said, I think that's what works for it. When you get to the line and you say, returning to a halfway normal world, it's such an effective song. I can't undersell this enough. It literally is one of my favorite songs I've heard in the last 5 years.
Well, and it evokes sadness. Yeah. One of the things that it was my favorite song on the album as well. Yeah. And it's because it allows us to kind of, I really thought deeply about this. And as a social worker, I was like, okay, what is really kind of going on here for me? And it's the fact that it allows us to grieve and to go through that grief and loss process that we've had over the last 18 months and really have ignored, and allows us to take that moment to feel that way and see that other people also feel that way. And that, like you had mentioned, that like this isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that we will move forward, but at the same time we want that normal, but at the same time we also know normal wasn't healthy and we need to move forward and have a new normal. And so it really plays that line of all of those different things all at once, and the music matches up perfectly with that sadness of that song.
Well, to reference one of my mentors, Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Nice.
And that was, one of the fundamental emotions that people had, which suddenly they were cut off from their normal lives and the things that were most important to them. And you can't help but reassess and reevaluate your priorities and how you've been living your life prior to that moment, when suddenly you're deprived of all those critical connections.
Well, and another thing that you do so brilliantly with it is I realized this after I listened to it, I went back to it. I was like, oh, this is a pandemic song. You never once referred to it in the song as a pandemic song, which I thought was one of the most brilliant things lyrically about that song. But then you have the line in there about being side to side, toe to toe, the whole social distance thing. It's a song that you can listen to, and having lived through 2020, every person knows exactly what that song is about. And I thought that was just brilliant about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I mean, I did leave a few little subtle, not so subtle clues in there. Like, for example, the at the ball game, the Diamond Oasis and players running the bases, and the catcher is wearing a mask.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, it's just I love that. It's just there's enough in there that we all know what it's about, but it doesn't hammer, it doesn't hammer the whole pandemic idea over your head. It goes right for the jugular of what we're all feeling or what everyone's feeling. And I think it's I said I wasn't going to gush about this, but it literally is one of my favorite songs of the last 5 years.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. As opposed to The Russians Are Coming, which actually hammers you over the head with the hammer and sickle.
I was going to say, you vary that up, like between sarcasm and like
it's so comical.
Out, like, I'm going to just say exactly what I'm thinking. Like, and from one song to another, like you go from Stupid Town, which is so sarcastic, and I love the old fashioned feel of it, which kind of gives it that like, oh, let's go back to old Americana, but in such a sarcastic way. And then the next song right afterwards is a straightforward song of Riding with Biden. Like,
well, Riding with Biden was the first song that I wrote in this collection of songs for American Lullaby. And I wrote it because when Hillary Clinton was running for president, everyone said, oh, Din, you have a song called Hey, Hey, Hillary. You should turn that into a campaign song. And I thought about it. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. And I even, did some early sketches to do a music video. But then I along with everybody else, I just assumed she was going to win. It became less of a priority. And then I just forgot about it. So when she lost, I can't tell you, and just to illustrate the megalomania of a typical songwriter, is that I thought, oh, my God, she lost by like 10,000 votes in Michigan. It's my fault. If I had done this song, it would have generated a couple of votes and it would have made the difference. Of course, I realize that's patently untrue. But when Biden was running against Trump's second term, I made damn sure that I wrote the song and produced a music video for it, and included it on this album because as a document of what we're going through, it was important for me to say emphatically that for whatever his faults, and he's got many, that we still owe Joe Biden a debt for having prevented Trump from having a second term, because we dodged a bullet. And that bullet is not landed. It's still heading our way. But it can't be understated how worse off we would be if Trump had given a second term and was finally unchecked and unmoored from what little reality he might have been attached to.
And I think one of the things that's really cool about your music is very much like Steven. He's not, you don't necessarily like say, I'm going to put this and kind of hide it and secretly put in my thoughts behind my music. You are straight out there about what and put out there what you believe and what you think, and people either can accept that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to find some kind of balance that people hopefully find palatable, because I don't want to constantly bang them over the head with these kinds of messages. But it's why I adopted the model of a lullaby for this entire album, and in particular the title track, American Lullaby. It's because if you think about it, there's a curious property that all lullabies have in common in every culture, in every corner of the world. And that is that you have parents rocking their babies to sleep, singing them these beautiful melodies, the lyrics of which are foretelling horrible disasters that are going to befall these little babies as they grow and face the world. And I mean, think about Rockabye Baby. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. Then the bough breaks, the cradle falls on the kid's head out of a tree. First of all, what's the kid doing in the tree in the first place? The point is that the only way it makes any sense to me is to interpret it as the means by which parents try to instill crucial information to the next generation without scaring the hell out of them. So they fill their nursery rhymes and their lullabies with these dire warnings about potential disaster, things to be afraid of, things to avoid. And they couch it in soothing, comforting tones as they lull these little kids to sleep. And that really was my plan for this album, American Lullaby, because again, I was very aware that I was dealing with a lot of difficult topics. And people say, "Oh, is this a political album?" It's not. It's a gossip album. It's current events. It's talking about things that are going on in our lives, in everybody's lives. And but again, I didn't want to scare the hell out of people as they were listening to it. So I did try to tread that line carefully in terms of the messages I was trying to convey. And some of it is explicit, some of it's implicit, and some of it's really obscure.
I'm going to pull us back. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to pull us back a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit about B&L's version of McDonald's Girl. And we can go more into Dean's album later on, because I really do want people to go out there and listen to it. But we'll kind of come back to that a little bit more later on. B&L's version of McDonald's Girl, by the way, if you've never heard it, here is a quick snippet.
She doesn't try to impress anyone. She doesn't act real tough like all the other girls that I know. She don't treat me like a simpleton. She's not ashamed to be the only other virgin I know. And when my hamburger's cold, I get up ready to go. She's only 15 years old, and I'm in love with her so.
Is much more, I would say almost manic. Like, Heidi, do you want to break it down a little bit?
Well, I checked it, and it seems like they take it up. You had it around, I want to say around 150 4 beats per minute, somewhere around there. Quarter equals 100, somewhere around there. And B&L took it up to about like 158, 160. So they like pumped it through some massive like woohoo. They put crack in it.
They give it some Red Bull
and just took it. Yeah, they Red Bulled it. And took it way up, and brought that energy up. So in that way, it's already it takes it to a hyperactive level. But the chord breakdown is fairly similar, but then they do some strange things with it. It's not as similar like as far as the jazz chords and things like that. They kind of simplify the chord structures. So that is interesting, that they kind of took it down to like a base, like a very traditional model of pop chord progressions. So, but it is a lot faster. Now, I'm curious to know, were you like, when you first heard it, were you like, wait, whoa, that's not even like my song?
Well, I laughed the first time I heard it. And, by quoting the Beastie Boys, basically they were saying, we have the right to party. And so, and that's how I interpreted their interpretation of the song. It became, sort of a party version of that, that teenage love song filled with angst, a little more fueled by whatever was on tap at the party. And so, but it's look, I love Barenaked Ladies, and what I associate with all of their music is enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And so I just take it that they took sort of my romantic ballad version of McDonald's Girl and made it that much more enthusiastic. And so I appreciated that from the get-go.
Which is kind of like what they did with Fox on the Run too. Like they like to take these songs that were a little bit more ballady, and they're like, all right, we're going to really pump it with enthusiasm.
But I don't think it takes away from like the innocence of it either. Like, I think I don't think their increase in tempo and their changes don't necessarily take away, because the lyrics are so solid.
Yes.
And I think that's what works.
Oh,
I think it works.
And I think that their approach to it also lends itself to that adolescent frenzy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I feel like their version is, and I thought about this too when I compared the two side by side. I mean, their version is a B&L song. They made it a B&L song. Oh yeah, right from the arrangement. Oh, yeah. I mean, the way they did the arrangement and everything. Yeah. Because I love the arrangement of the original one. I love one thing that I don't, and we all know I love B&L. That's why we're here. And one thing that I miss from the original is the vocal arrangement, the harmonies that you get on the original. The arrangement of the vocal harmonies on the original, even just like the simple things like quarter pounder with cheese, that high cheese harm.
And I rehearse what I'm gonna say. I'd like an order of fries, quarter pounder with cheese. I love the light in your eyes. Will you go out with me, please?
Those little things. It's hard for me to listen to the B&L version and not miss that kind of thing.
Well, like I say, I actually get and always get a huge kick at it, hearing their version of it. And look, my only gripe is, why didn't they cover it on one of their major label releases?
Right.
That's my only complaint, guys. You know what? I love you. But, even though you didn't write it, you could have put it on one of your big studio albums.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen a studio album version of their version of this song. Like, it would have been.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
I don't think they've ever done a cover on a actual album, though.
I'm only aware of them putting out sort of some kind of fan collectors live version of it, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And there are bootlegs versions of it, and a couple of folks that put up recordings from live gigs, I think, in Buffalo, New York in 2000, New Year's Eve, they played it. And that's somewhere out there.
Well, I mean,
they could release it on a flexi disc.
Really? Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Take it out to McDonald's,
I
slip it in mailboxes.
Sure. Why not?
Actually, when one of my first record albums when I was a kid on my little Holly Hobby record player was a flexi disc of the McDonald's Big Mac song, Big Mac, 2 all beef patty, special sauce,
That's
lettuce,
funny.
cheese, pickles, and it was on a flick. I think it came in a Happy Meal. I'm pretty sure it did. But I think that's the only flexi disc recording I've ever owned in my life. But
Yep.
B&L could be onto something if they did that.
Yeah, listen, I'm all for it.
I do want to mention, so you brought up earlier that they do quote Beastie Boys, and I want to give credit to where credit is due.
Well, you know that she's got a gold tooth. You know she's hardcore. She'll show you a good time, and then she'll show you the McDoor, boy.
So that is from Hey Ladies by the Beastie Boys. That little breakdown that they do there in the middle, which is a very fun kind of thing.
Don't you know that she's got a gold tooth? You know she's hardcore. She'll show you a good time, and then she'll show you the door, boy. Isn't that Tyler? I think Tyler.
It is Tyler.
Yeah. Boy.
And then the menu list breakdown is actually from the 1981 commercial.
Good time for great taste of McDonald's. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. Big Mac, fillet of fish, quarter pound of French fries. As he cook, thick shake, the sundaes and apple pies. Sing the song. Yeah, sing that song to taste. You only find in one place.
I had to go through and look at all the commercials to figure out which one it actually came from, but it was 1981 where they did the Big Mac fillet of fish breakdown.
Pound of French fries, icy Coke, thick shakes. Oh yeah.
But listen,
Is this why we're
you know,
not getting paid anymore because you're paying someone else to go through all these commercials?
I got to tell you that the whole McDonald's theme song canon is awesome. I mean, I really respect it. And my favorite was you're the one, you are the only. You know, it's like there's all these great songs, and so to be a small part of that canon is an honor.
I can see that because they do have a really great list of songs that are in their advertising.
Well, it's almost like having a James Bond theme song, but not quite.
I feel like you have a James Bond theme song though, because I feel like The Russians Are Coming could be one.
Hey, listen, from your mouth to with the Broccoli family's production company's ears. Well, I just want to say that every word of The Russians Are Coming is derived from the 1,000-page Congressional Intelligence Committee report, Senate report on Russian interference in the 2016 election. A bipartisan committee that studied the Russian active measures in trying to get Donald Trump elected. So I didn't make anything up in the song. Every lyric is based on factual evidence and confirmed and agreed to by a bipartisan congressional committee, which concludes the only reason Trump was saved from a prison haircut is because Stone and Manafort kept their mouth shut.
By the way, excellent Russian accent.
Well, thank you.
Did you actually take lessons for that, or
No. You know what I did? I listened to Steve Carell's accent in Despicable Me. I think, well, if he could do it, I could give it a shot. Russian fixer Felix Sater drove to work in the Trump Tower elevator. And so I just things like Bagman would Begman, and Hillary would be Hillary. So Hillary Clinton. It was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun, and people seemed to get a kick out of it.
Jeff?
Yes.
Would you like to take over for a few minutes and have us do our ratings?
I can do that. So, Dean, the way we do this is I pick an arbitrary based on something that came out of the conversation or anything, pick an arbitrary thing we're rating it on, and we rate the song on a scale of 0 to 5. Decimals are allowed, so 2.5, 2.6. 4 to 5 are songs that you would absolutely want on your playlist. And then from there on down. Now, my understanding is, of course, we're ranking the Barenaked Ladies cover today, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We're not ranking at all the original McDonald's. Because I love them so much, because they're referenced in the song, I've decided we're now ranking this on a scale of 0 to 5 McDonald's French fries.
Okay.
Because
would you like some fries with that?
Would you like some fries with that? Because who can avoid McDonald's French fries? That's what I so.
Now, is this before or after they stopped using animal fat and started using vegetable fat?
Whichever one you prefer. We want your best fry rating here.
Well, to be honest, the Five Brothers Burger place makes the best fries, in my opinion.
I would agree with that, actually. And they just dump them right in the bag, and it's amazing.
They do. It's right there. It's fresh. They're nicely seasoned and crisp. And so that, I mean, I would give them a 5. As far as the McDonald's, if I can harken back to those pre-vegetable fat days, look, I munched them up as a kid, just like everybody else on the planet. And so I would give them, well, I can't, I would give those fries a 3.5.
Now, is that your ranking of the Barenaked Ladies cover?
No, not at all. That's just the fries.
Oh, I was wondering. I thought so. You're ranking the fries. Okay, well, let's start with you. How would you? I usually put the guests first, so this one's a little awkward because we're basically asking you to rank a cover of your song.
My own song. Okay.
Your own song. So how would you, on a scale of 0 to 5, how many fries, Five Guys or McDonald's, would you rank the Barenaked Ladies cover of McDonald's Girl?
Oh, okay. I misunderstood the original question, but I shall endeavor to answer this one forthrightly. I would have to say this, that my one caveat is that this is a live version. All the versions I've heard are live versions.
Right.
And so I've never heard a studio version of their cover of McDonald's Girl. And I think I would be very pleased to hear one day. But in the meantime, I'm reluctant to give a 5 to what are typically badly recorded bootlegs of their live concerts. I would still give it a 4.5 because it's a great version of an infectious song that they make even more exuberant, and it never fails to crack me up every time I hear it.
All right, setting the bar high, Heidi.
I also was going to go with a 4.5, but I love the dismount of this song so much, where he's like, "Show you the door, boy," and then "I am in love with the McDonald's." So, like, there's so much right and left turns that I just love, that are so endearing in the song. So I'm going to give a couple points for that dismount, and I'm going to throw it up to a 4.7.
Okay.
Cool.
Because evocative of me being a McDonald's girl. So there you go.
All right. So I will go next. I absolutely love the original. I love the Barenaked Ladies version. I as a cover, it's great. Like Dean said, it's hard to rank a live version. It's you're not getting, what would it sound like if you put everything into it? If you had the mixing, if you had the arrangement. I love it. I love the energy of this one. Like I said,
I'm loving it.
I'm loving it. I love that little guitar riff they do, like leading from the pre-chorus into the chorus, like the little like so many moments in this. One thing, like I said, that I kind of miss is in the original. Yeah.
Careful, we have to pay for that.
That's true. Yeah.
No, you don't. It started with me.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's right.
One thing that I miss is that the original song has such a great vocal arrangement. There's so many great harms in the original. And this is Barenaked Ladies, and they're known for their harms. Steve and Ed are the harm masters. I mean, they're so good at it. So I kind of would have liked to hear a little more. If I'm being a little critical, I would have liked to hear a little more of the harm play going on there. That said, it's a fun song. I'm going to give this one a 4.4.
All right. Hold on, I got to find your column.
I'm the column that ranks. What did I rank fives? I've had some fives in there.
I know. I have it.
I'm the column that
alphabetically.
ranks. Maybe you should dry high all the time.
Oh well, I had it all figured out and it was alphabetical, but then I had to add Heidi in.
Oh,
and now
yeah.
I've completely blown all
The new lady
rating
threw
systems
everything off out of whack. Look at that.
I'm sorry. I do that to people a lot.
I had to add a whole new column, add a whole new rating way of averaging everything. I'm gonna have to fix this whole spreadsheet later on. So,
First world problems.
Yeah. I blame the Russians.
I need to write a song called First World Problems. That's what I'm going to do.
Weird Al Yankovic already did one.
That's true.
That's true. That's true. Gosh darn it. He beats me to it every time.
Tracy, I would love to know, how many fries do you give the Barenaked Ladies cover of McDonald's Girl?
I'm gonna give this Wendy's fries. First of all, Wendy's not a sponsor.
That is controversial.
Wendy's, I absolutely love your Wendy's fries. Like them better than McDonald's fries. I haven't tried the Five Guys burgers yet though, and they're not giving us a sponsorship either. So maybe that should be our not gonna sponsor us moment of this week is it's Five Guys burgers. But I agree with you, Jeff. I miss the harms on this, but it's still such a fun song. I only have to give it a little bit of a ding because it's one, there's not, as Dean, as you said, an actual studio version, and I would love to hear an actual studio version of this. And because there's no harmonies. And I know that if they did a studio version, they could totally pull off the harmonies.
There'd be an arrangement, yeah.
And they didn't do it. I do like the rap breakdown though, and the McDonald's menu list breakdown. I actually have this on my playlist. I can't give it anything lower than a 4 because I actually took it and downloaded it for my playlist along with Dean's version. It's on there. Like it randomly, and last week when I was listening, it randomly threw up my thing. Dean's version came up and then B&L's version came up right afterwards. So I was like, yes, this is amazing. I would have to give this, I think, a 4.4. I think you have to agree with you, Jeff.
It's rare, but it happens.
I know. Very rare. Very rare.
Rare.
So, Dean, where can people find your music?
Well, Jeff, funny you should ask.
Specifically the new album that you have coming out. I believe it's released the day that we release this episode.
My latest album is entitled American Lullaby. It's 12 tunes that talk all about our lives and the world around us, and is coming out Friday, the 27th of August, and can be ordered through my website, which is deanfriedman.com, and through all the other likely suspects like Spotify and Amazon and Apple Music. Although I have to stress that although it's great to listen and save my music on all of those streaming sites, they don't actually pay musicians more than book us. And so if you want to support independent artists, all your favorite independent artists, then it's best to buy direct. So you're encouraged to go to deanfriedman.com, and you can order a CD, or I have even USB credit card sized USBs of American Lullaby, the album. You can just pop it in any device that has a USB port. And you can order digital downloads as well, or go to bandcamp.com. You can order the album or digital downloads. And Bandcamp is one of the very few music sites that treats their musicians with respect and a measure of fairness. So I support them.
And best to order on Friday, because usually Fridays you get the full amount.
That's true, yeah. Well, usually some Friday, but you know what? You don't have to wait till Friday. You can check out the music on my website and listen to it at all your favorite streaming sites. Just pay me a visit. And if I could add one last point here, as I might have referenced earlier, I've been doing a monthly Zoomcast the last Sunday of every month. It's from right here in the Hunking Goose Studios, where I'm talking to you from now. It's not completely all request, but folks get to vote on what songs they want to hear, and the playlist is curated by my enthusiastic listeners, and then I throw in a couple of my own choices, and I'm assisted ably by these a pair of socks puppets that are adept at many things that you wouldn't think socks were adept at. It's always a blast. It's always a lot of fun. And you're all invited last Sunday of every month. And you can find all this information and order all the CDs and tickets to all my gigs, virtual or otherwise, at deanfriedman.com.
And in the meantime, if you want to watch something that's free, the appearance for this week is when Dean was actually joined Stephen Page Trio on stage to sing. And I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Ariel.
That sounds likely. Sure. At the Kate Theater in Connecticut. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So it's an amazing video to watch. I recommend everyone watch that. And I will have that in the liner notes. But all right, I have a hard time with the transition for this week. I mean, we've been pretty political today, so I guess that what I can say is, I just recently got done watching the new Borat movie, and well, not new now, but new to me because I'm behind the times a little bit, and I gotta say, watching that, Rudy Giuliani did not come out looking good with that. And if I just have one thing to say, I would say to Rudy, a message to him, if you would, that Rudy.
A message to you. I just got.
The pun for the next episode is always, you just have to sit here and listen. It's gonna eventually.
Hit me in the teeth.
I just, Rudy, don't bring people that are interviewing you into your personal hotel room. Just it's not a good idea from the get-go. Like, interview them in a public space. That's just my recommendation for you, Rudy.
That sounds like sage advice, Tracy.
It is good advice. Good advice.
Well, Dean, it has been a real pleasure having you on tonight. It's been a lot of fun discussing this song as well as all of your wonderful songs.
Yes, it has.
Well, this has been a treat for me as well, and great to hang out with you folks. And I applaud your mission and all your efforts. And always a pleasure to meet a genuine, authentic, lovely McDonald's girl.
Aww.
And to everyone that's been listening, join us next week for Message to You, Rudy. But thanks. That was fun.
See what you did there.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, that was fun. Don't forget, no regrets, except maybe one.
To celebrate joining Pantheon Podcasts, Rock Camp, the podcast, the official podcast of Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, is giving away a guitar signed by Mike Portnoy of Dream Theater, Marty Friedman, formerly of Megadeth, and legendary shredder Zakk Wylde, plus our rockstar counselors like Vinny Appice, Monty Pittman, and more. To enter to win, simply follow, rate, and review our podcast on your preferred platform, and that's all you have to do. For more information, go to rockcamp.com/podcast.